Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. JWB board meeting. Testing.
Okay. Okay. I'd like to. Can I have your attention, please? Can we? I'd like to get started with the meetings that we have in front of us. The JWB Finance Committee meeting. Chief, could you lead us in that?
Yep. Good morning. We'll go ahead and call the Finance Committee to order. We have one action item to approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes. Take a motion.
Motion to approve.
A second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. And that'll adjourn our meeting.
Thank you, Chief. As we prepare to begin the board meeting, I'd like to welcome our new board member, Superintendent Kevin Hendrick. We really appreciate you joining us on, especially with your current schedule, trying to get yourself all situated. So with that, we're going to put you right to work. So could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just as a quick reminder, if everyone, when you're speaking, if you could turn your mics on so that the people on YouTube can hear you. Probably most of us don't have that problem anyway, but just in case. Let's move on to the consent agenda items. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
A second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Let's move into the action items. Approve proposed FY23 millage rates and preliminary FY23 budget. Laura Krug.
Good morning. We are here today to discuss and approve the proposed fiscal 23 millage rate and the preliminary 23 budget. When we met with the board on June 9th, we presented a preliminary millage rate of 0.8981, which was the same millage rate that we have been used and have been in place for the last 13 years. Since that date, we held a Finance Committee meeting on June 16th, 2022, where we discussed 3 different scenarios. We discussed the flat millage rate of the 0.8981, a rolled back millage rate, which we had estimated at that time, of 0.8083, and a reduced millage rate, which was something in the middle, again estimated at 0.8550. At the time, we did not have the certified taxable values from the Pinellas County Property Appraiser's Office, and we were not able to calculate the rolled back amount, so we estimated that amount. During the discussions, it included items such as the amount of tax revenues that these millage rates would generate, the inflation rates, the COLAs, the percentage of lapse funds, the sustainability of additional programs through the letters of intent that we have issued. We also discussed the expansion of the workforce stabilization funds to our different agencies and the amount of the reserves or unrestricted fund balance amounts. Based on the Finance Committee's discussion, the middle ground millage rate at that time of 0.8550 seemed most appropriate. On July 1st, 2022, we received the certified taxable values from the Pinellas County Property Appraiser's Office. That information has been incorporated into the preliminary budgets that you have before you, as well as the different scenarios. We have also attached for you those certification tax forms, the DR-420 and the DR-420 MMP. And we have not provided those to you in the past, but we felt it would be nice for those of you who like to look at the numbers, and we have a lot of numbers that we're looking at today, to be able to determine how that rolled back rate is calculated and how the proposed rollback rate is calculated. This is not a number that we just create and pull out of the air. There's a lot of information on that form that is pre-populated from the Property Appraiser's Office. So those documents generated a rollback rate of 0.8015 and a current proposed millage rate of 0.8508. That rate also included an adjustment for the change in the per capita Florida personal income, which was based on Florida statutes. So again, using those numbers, we crunched the numbers, we did the 3 forecasts that you had before you, and if we use the 0.8085, that's the maximum, the majority vote would be necessary for the maximum millage rate. That's close to the middle number that we had discussed at the Finance Committee, and this rate would require a simple majority or 6 affirmative votes at our trim hearing meetings. If we were to use a rate higher than that, then we would have to have 8 affirmative votes at our trim hearing meetings. So we listened to the board, we went back, we reviewed our numbers, we revised the adjusted millage rates, and we looked at the unrestricted reserves. Staff is here today recommending the proposed adjusted rolled back millage rate of 0.8508. The forecast scenario shows that rate, and I have it in front of you today, I've provided some large copies of it. It shows that millage rate for 2 fiscal years, fiscal 23 and fiscal 24. However, it would require an increase in the millage rate back to the 8981 in fiscal 25, and we would have to look at possible reductions in some of the programs in order for us to keep our reserve rate at the end of fiscal 27, which is our target of 8.3%, and that reserve rate would be at 9.25. So the millage rate in property taxes would result in about $94.4 million in tax revenues. This is a 7.43% increase over prior year, approximately $6.3 million. Our beginning fund balance, which is a part of our funds available for appropriation, is about $53 million, which is what we've estimated. Our total program expenditures are budgeted at $97.1 million. This is an increase of $16.7 million, or a 21% increase over the prior year. But of course, this includes additional funding for the programs to align with our strategic plan through our letters of intent and our workforce stabilization. Total expenditures are budgeted at $112.8 million. And as a result of these calculations, we would end up with the year in our fund balance, or our unreserved money, of $32 million. I know you've got a lot of information behind the packet with the summary, the schedules, the actual preliminary budget, which would be our workbook, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and I have with us our budget director as well.
Do we have any questions from the board? Brian?
Just quickly, I spoke to Beth and Laura about this, and I really appreciate it. Again, staff, thank you so much. I know we kind of did a hard pivot about a month and a half ago from the initial discussions on the millage rate, and I really appreciate all your work on it, and the team and everybody who had a hand in preparing this. I had a member of the public who was concerned about the salaries, COLAs, and new positions being 24.11%, but I just wanted to give us an opportunity to explain that and explain the true COLA is only like 10.2%, and the rest of that is for 5 new positions. So I know it says new positions on there, so it's, I thought it was relatively clear, but between now and September, we might want to break those 2 numbers out on the final budget, so that if someone's just looking at it and says, COLA, why do we have a 24% COLA? But that was it. That was my only comment. So thank you again.
Yes, that's correct. It does include the combination of those 2 items.
And yes, that's our plan to make exactly that kind of change before we come back in September for the trim meetings.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the proposed budget?
Well, we need to take these one at a time, so the
Yeah,
first
that's what
action item will
I'm
be
sorry,
the-
you're right. So I'm sorry, does someone else wanted to say something?
Yeah, I want to make a comment. I'm in with the majority of the board and getting the millage rate down a little bit, but I think we need to make sure we're very aware. There is we know there's some type of large recession coming. May not affect property values as much as it has in the past, but I can say, I'm going on what's happening. The governor's withdrawing, several $1 billion back from that he was going to pass out back into the budget because they're concerned that there won't be enough money in the state going forward without, causing increases somewhere. And what we're looking at is we're moving into a recession within the next couple of years, and the board is agreeing to raise the millage rate in a couple of years in order to not lose programs. So I just want to make sure we're all aware of what we're doing and what we're committing to at this meeting right now, and what, the potential fall is in the future. That's all. Thank you.
Just as part of that, if we remember correctly, we all, during our discussions, we spoke that we needed to be able to leave this rate at least for 2 years before we would readjust it back. And I think the staff has shown that. I think your comments are right on, and we have to be very much aware of it. But that was part of the criteria in which we looked at this for. So hopefully our thoughts around recession and where we might be heading to may not be as strong as we're all fearing that they will be, but I think we're still in a reasonably good shape with it as it is. So unless there's any other comments, do I have a motion to approve the proposed millage rate for FY 2023?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, let's move on to the preliminary FY 23 budget.
Yes.
You want to say anything more, Laura? I'm sorry.
No, I highlighted the changes between the the prior years.
Do I have any questions on the FY 23 budget proposed budget? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve preliminary FY23 budget.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion's approved. Moving to adopt the regular board meeting schedule, Beth?
The list of board meeting dates are included in your packet and follow the general pattern that we have always followed in terms of which months we don't have meetings and generally the second Thursday of the month. So we're presenting this to you for your formal approval.
Any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion's approved. All right, I just wanted to make a comment. I've asked Beth to move her executive report up before the presentations for a specific reason. And that reason is the letter that we've received from Hope Village. And what we, the staff and myself and Colleen have had discussions. I think we've all had an opportunity to look at this as well. So Beth, would you like to walk us through what we're planning to do?
Sure. First, I'm going to do some of the lighter pieces out of the CEO report, or at least less exciting. We just wanted to let you know that consistent with the request by this board, staff will be bringing back to the Finance Committee at its August meeting the currently in place personnel policies. They were presented for board approval at the monthly meeting back on December 9th, 2021. They were approved, but at that meeting, the board asked that they come back to a committee, either a newly formed committee or using the Finance Committee to sort of spend more time looking at them. And so we're prepared to do that, and that's going to happen at the August Finance Committee meeting. And I would just note, as always, any board member who might not be a member of that committee is always welcome to be here. Any member of the public is welcome to be here. The other, I think, just great joy for the staff over the years, and we missed some of it during COVID, is the summer book bus. And some of you may have had the opportunity, I know Commissioner Gerard did, of being on the book bus, and it is just a joy to see the kids that pop onto the bus with their eyes wide open and being told that they can pick 2 books. This is a shared activity with the school system. I think we staff the book bus 3 weeks, and we take it to non-school locations. We take it to community centers, YMCAs, early learning centers, that sort of thing. And the books are well chosen, and they're also they're color coded for those of us who might not know which books are appropriate for which age. Yes, the greens go to this age group, and and so on. So you'll see some, if you follow us on Facebook, you'll find lots of pictures, a few people you might recognize. But it's, as I said, a lot of our staff members volunteer, and they really do volunteer because it's just great fun. So, and as it happens, we also got some nice press for doing that. So, let's see, a few save the dates, and I'll speak them, but you will get save the date in your as an Outlook invite or whatever. But our annual Children's Summit is slated for Friday, January 27th, 2023, from 8 in the morning until 10 at SPC Seminole campus in their conference room. So this will start to look more like pre-COVID. That's where we held it then. And then the annual Kids First Awards Luncheon is scheduled for Friday, April 28th, 2023, from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Coliseum in St. Petersburg. And following this meeting, you'll get invitations within your email to all of those. The other item, it seemed appropriate for me to just present and discuss with you was a letter that was presumably sent, or by its notation was sent to the governor and a significant number of other political officials at the local and other level. And I believe you have a copy of that letter in the folder, and it would be titled Hope Villages of America. It was a letter written by Hope Villages of America, formerly known as RCS, for those who may not know, to all of these folks, making a variety of statements around JWB's termination of funding of Grace House. Later today, I'll be sending a letter out to all of the recipients of that letter to correct some significant inaccuracies. So the purpose of the correspondence is to address the inaccuracies stated by Hope Villages of America leadership in a letter that, while it wasn't dated, it was transmitted, best we know, on July 19th, so a couple days ago. The Juvenile Welfare Board remains committed to the safety and well-being of Pinellas County children and their families. We also remain committed to being accountable and responsible with taxpayer dollars. And as such, the JWB made the prudent decision to terminate the HVA Grace House contract at the JWB board meeting on December 10th, 2020. So remember, that's a year and a half ago, give or take. The contract termination date was effective February 28th, 2021, so to give them time to transition. Due to the severity of the concerns and repeat findings, JWB placed HVA on a corrective action plan in August of 2019, so a full year and a half before the termination. The corrective action plan and subsequent contract termination was the result of continuing and serious administrative concerns, including failure to conduct level 2 background checks for staff and volunteers who work with children and their families. And that dated back to August 2018. There were also financial issues, including material weaknesses in their annual audits in fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19, and programmatic concerns expressed by Grace House shelter participants and employees from interviews conducted by JWB program monitoring staff in the fall of 2020. Hope Villages of America CEO Kirk Smith, his leadership, and board chairs were well advised of the issues and the status of the corrective action plan throughout this entire period of time, as well as the imminent termination of JWB's grant to HVA for Grace House. In addition, HVA had ample opportunity to address this board during our regularly scheduled public board meetings. JWB immediately reinvested these dollars with St. Vincent de Paul to support a rapid rehousing model aligned with Housing First principles, which is the best thinking in reduction of homelessness, as well as with those, they're aligned with Housing First, also aligned with Pinellas County Human Services, and aligned with Pinellas Homeless Leadership Alliance. So this allows JWB to fund a program that is aligned with national best practices and is the most effective way to help homeless families. All details surrounding the corrective action plan and the subsequent contract termination of HVA Grace House were well documented over time and were made public at multiple JWB board meetings and will be attached to this letter. JWB will always err on the side of keeping children safe and treating families with dignity. Consistent with our long-standing practices, we will continue to robustly monitor and hold our funded programs to the highest standards. To the greatest degree possible, We will continue to exercise sound fiscal responsibility and be excellent stewards of taxpayer dollars. So this is the text of a letter that I intend to send later today, but I'm also, I and staff, because the timeline is extensive of everything that went on in this process. So we do have staff members who can answer more specific questions than I might be able to.
Brian, you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's excellent. I think the letter is extremely thorough, and I think it is responsive to a lot of what I think are mischaracterizations and things that are just frankly not true that unfortunately Mr. Smith is saying. I'd like you to CC it to everyone that he CC'd his letter to. I personally received a call from Mayor Hibbard from Clearwater saying that Mr. Smith had visited him in his office to complain about us and what's going on. So it's clear that Mr. Smith is on a defamation campaign against us, which is very disappointing. I went back and watched the December 10th, 2020 meeting. It's on YouTube. You can find it. The conversation was about 13 minutes long. Mr. Smith did not appear. The conversation was pretty robust but concise since he was not here. And Mr. Dillinger at the time said, you know, that they didn't even respond to the corrective action plan. And I don't know if that's 100% accurate, that they didn't respond at all. But, you know, the impression that I got was that after 18 months, they did not give us any ability or information to help them. And when I came to that meeting, you know, my church, First United Methodist Church of Clearwater, has supported Grace House. I've painted the walls in there. I mean, I can't say I've been there 20 times, but I've been there. My wife's been there. My daughter's been there. My wife was on the Blue Jean Ball Committee. I made food in people's homes for fundraisers. My law firm has been over to the RCS headquarters and delivered, you know, Christmas items. I'm on Facebook with Mr. Smith and one of my associates, one of my law partners. So I've met Mr. Smith many times in a volunteer capacity, and I'm just very disappointed in him. I could not be more disappointed. I saw a news conference last week where he said that this board did not give him any opportunities to speak about this, which is a lie. That is a lie. I cannot describe it in any other terms. And I hope this is on YouTube. And, you know, I have half a mind to send it to Mr. Smith and ask him to come here and explain himself. Because we're still partners. This ain't how partners treat each other. I'll get off my soapbox. Thanks.
Just staying in that same line, the staff, as well as myself, looked back through the past records to see, and Mr. Smith has never come to any of our meetings. There were representatives who never brought up any of these issues during that time. I remember very, very clearly during those meetings that all board members participated and asked very, very strong questions to Beth and team about what do we do in replacement for it. The question one mainly around St. Vincent de Paul and their ability to support the efforts, and we were able to find that they had the capabilities in the space, in the areas in which we were needed to address. What also was very disappointing, again, from my perspective only, is in reading his letter, he confuses things, and his confusion leads between total homeness and what's important to in protection of the children. And if you read what we've done in our review of this, we were clearly focused in on the safety and the protection of the children as well as their families. And having background checks and safety were the most important things. And that's part of our responsibility, I believe, to the community. So not sure what his rationale is or why he's attacking this direction. But I would agree with you. I'd welcome to have him come here and talk to us if he thinks he needs to. But to take the approach he took was, I think, was wrong, and I think it was also misleading. So hopefully this letter will help correct that to all parties who want to review. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Beth, for bringing that to our attention. And also, we look forward to you sending out the letter. Okay, let's move on to the presentations. This should be one of our favorites, right? Early Learning, Early Childhood Public Awareness Campaign presentation, April. And Brian Butler, President and CEO of Vistra Communications.
Come on up. So good morning. We're so excited to be here today alongside the team from Vistra Communications to share the progress of our Early Childhood Public Awareness Campaign. And it was just 5 short months ago that we were before you regarding the competitive procurement. And we asked your approval to award Vistra Communications LLC to work collaboratively with JWB, along with our 0 to 3 think tank, to develop, refine, and launch the Early Childhood Public Awareness Campaign. As a reminder, the campaign aims to ensure that children birth to 3 achieve those critical milestones, and that we support parents and other caregivers as being their child's first and best teachers. The campaign's target audience includes parents, especially young parents and dads, and also grandparents, other relatives, and formal and informal caregivers. And we really wanted to also remind that this is a strategy of the board-approved 5-year strategic plan. So this is a long-term commitment. We're in it for the long haul. And that's what it's going to take to really prepare children as early as possible for success in kindergarten and well beyond. And also so everyone understands that learning begins at birth. I'd like to go to the next slide, which reminds us of the members of the 0 to 3 think tank. And they have played a vital role throughout this process. You'll hear a little more about the steps that we took alongside Vistra with the creative campaign, concept development, but they're going to continue to play a vital role, these individuals who are the experts in our community in this space. They're going to really play a vital role as we launch the campaign in September, October, and then we implement its outreach and success measurement plan. And while you'll hear more in a minute, I just wanted to take a moment to really thank the 0 to 3 think tank members that are shown up on your screen for all their commitment to date, their time, their expertise. They are really excited about this, and they are in it for the long haul as well. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Brian Butler. He's the president and CEO of Vistra Communications and his talented team. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Butler.
Well, thank you, April, and thank you for your partnership. And Mr. Chair and Beth, thank you for allowing us and our team to participate with you, to collaborate with your team often daily over the last 5 months or so to try to get this right. And we understand the importance of getting this right. I'm a retired Army officer. We came to Tampa Bay area about 15, 16 years ago, and I couldn't find a job. So I started this little agency out of my home. And one of the first contracts we won was a program to help families and kids and keep them together. And we haven't forgotten that. So a lot of the work we do in this community is focused on families, it's focused on kids, it's focused on making a difference in communities. So we love this and we appreciate it, and we're glad that we were selected to be your partner. And we will continue to give this our best shot to get this right for those involved. Joining us today is, I'll start with Josh Talkington. Josh is our Senior Vice President for Communications. Josh has a passion for this area. He leads our corporate team, and he was working very closely with Alicia, April's sidekick, who's probably watching us on video right now because she unfortunately couldn't be here. So if anything I get wrong, she's going to let me know about 30 minutes after I leave here. And Tim, our creative director, who has 40 years of doing this with big brands like Coca-Cola and Exxon and lots of other big companies, but also in this space where we create impact. So this is very exciting to us. And then we have our academic turned operations person, my wife, Dr. Maureen Butler, who ensures that we involve critical thinking in every aspect of what we do. And we perform at an academic level with academic rigor and get things done. Maureen?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having us. This has been a pleasure to work on this project, and it's personal to us. Brian and I became grandparents for the first time 3 months ago. So the things that we are learning and that we're working with April and her team on, we are imparting those things to our children as they're raising our grandchild, who's, of course, more important. Next slide, please. And don't tell them I said that. So we have been focused, as April said, we're focused on this 0 to 3, the first 1,000 days of life. It's so important, so critical. So in our rigorous process, we've kept that in the forefront, and we've gone through these 3 steps that you see on the slide: concept development, concept testing, and the campaign that we're presenting to you today. So as part of our concept development, we partnered with JWB, with April and her team. We had 3 listening sessions. We researched. And so we learned from the 0 to 3 think tank, the JWB staff, and from community partners what this needed to be, who we needed to communicate with, how we needed to communicate with them, challenges that you all have had in reaching the target audiences. We took the information from those listening sessions and created 4 concepts. We worked with the team to reduce that down to 3 concepts for testing. So in our testing phase, we had focus groups, virtual and in person, in English and in Spanish, to make sure that we reach those target audiences. And Josh will give you a little bit more about the participants in that testing phase. We took the information we received, we got lots of input, refined the concept that we'll present to you. And so the bottom line for this phase of the campaign for us was to attract people, the target audiences particularly, attract them, get their interest so they want to know more, so that we can share this very important information with them so that they can be that best and first teacher for our babies and toddlers. Josh, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Maureen. Do you have any idea the pressure of following the butlers when I present? Thanks for that. If we can go to the next slide, and I just want to spend, and I know you have the packet in front of you, so you've probably started flipping ahead a bit on this. The main point of the audience that we tested is the majority of these 67 participants through the virtual focus groups, the in-person focus groups, they were right in our target audience. So we're talking about parents, grandparents, caregivers, those that are closest to the children ages birth to 3 years old. And we had a great diverse mix from the age groups, from the ethnicities. And again, our main focus here was to hear from the people that we want to most impact during this campaign. And they're represented really well in this group that you see before you. Next slide, please. And that testing led us to this campaign and this campaign theme. And Tim's excited to show you what this looks like in real life and what it looks like in action. Turbo Babies on Track from Birth to 3 is the campaign that we didn't select, JWB didn't select, but our target audience, with the data that we have, with the research that we did, with the feedback we heard from them, this is what they selected. This is the campaign they said, as Maureen mentioned, they would be most attracted to. They would click on a link. They would download information if there was a campaign that looked and felt like this campaign. And as we go to the next slide, I'll tell you just a little bit about some of our key messages that will go around this campaign, and you can read through all those a little later as well. But the main point on this slide is when we talk about turbo babies, we're talking about that turbo lightning speed that the brain develops from 0 to 3 years old, and just how important that first 1,000 days of a baby's life is, and how fast that brain develops. So when you hear about the speed and the turbo, we're talking about the brain development of a child at that stage. And so the moment I think you've all been waiting for, Tim's going to spend the next few minutes going through how we plan to implement this in the community, how we plan to attract people to want to be interested, to go to a microsite, to download some great resources, and to really dig into some wonderful information. Tim?
Thank you. Thanks for this creative opportunity. The challenge was really a joy and a lot of fun to dive into with April and the entire staff at JWB. Next slide, please. These are examples of the creative executions that we will have for the campaign. It is not limited to these. These are simply the look and feel and voice and tone of the creative that we will be executing in the campaign. We have advertisements and posters and marketing collateral that communicate the Turbo Babies on track to birth to three, from birth to three concept. And we have core messaging that emphasizes that learning starts at birth and that the child's pit crew, those in their world, the caregivers, the grandparents, everyone that is surrounding that child and supporting that child is the pit crew, and they are important. They are the child's first and best teachers. And we emphasize in the second creative that parents start your baby's learning engine. The first 1,000 days are critically important. And our communications will frequently, most of the time, have a QR code as well as a URL that drives to free resources and activities that the PIT crew can use to rev up the child's early learning. And the shareable photo opportunity, what we are describing there is basically a fun photo op that could appear at high traffic venues, community events, libraries, community centers, churches, anywhere that large numbers of people are congregating. And it's a photo op that allows children to play and engage and encourages the parents to snap photos and share on Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram and help us get the word out. And encourages them to actually step into a storybook and pose for a photo. Next slide, please. The marketing collateral, one piece may include this large themed infographic that is represents the ages and stages of the child's on their track to learning from birth to three. And by age and stage, we would have it segmented with clear benchmarks in each of those quadrants in the racetrack to communicate various learning milestones. The large cutout, and by large we mean 5 foot high, 4 foot by 5 foot high cutout that would again appear in high traffic venues, featuring an incredibly cute baby with the Turbo Babies graphic and the headline, 80% of my brain growth happens before I'm 3 years old. And again, it has the QR code that drives them to free resources and activities that supports their development and learning every day, providing the parents the resources that they need to succeed. Next slide, please. We have a mobile-first microsite and digital marketing approach. And this microsite, of course, it's mobile first. That's the environment that we live in today. All of the parents are going to be reaching for their phones. Anyway, and we may as well make it useful in this process of helping their child in their learning and development. And we are presenting this in an age and stage type of information reveal that we discussed earlier with that infographic print piece. We want to be able to supply the information to the parents and caregivers, the PIC crew, when they need it. When a child is 3 months old to 6 months old, we want relevant information. When they're a year or 2 years old, we want information for that stage in their development as well. Social media and digital marketing will be ongoing. We'll have a tremendous presence in that area. And next slide, please. Localized outdoor and transit advertising. We want to communicate with the target audience, the parents and caregivers, where they live. And we have the ability to very strategically target the areas that our advertisements will appear in. This example is a transit ad, a bus shelter ad, but this also applies to bus advertisement, digital outdoor, static outdoor. We want to be in the marketplace so they see our message every day. We may have a street team which serve as brand ambassadors in the community to help get the word out and implement the program. And next slide, please. We also have this is part of what the QR code will drive through. It drives to information, and it also drives to free resources. And the free resources may be presented in a pit crew bag, this full-color canvas tote bag that will have elements such as books, which are very important, encouraging reading at this stage, educational toys, parent education and resource guide, and maybe even a link to a playlist because music is so important to early learning. A developmental stage print piece that we showed earlier, and elements for the babies such as an imprinted onesie, and car stickers that could serve as a billboard in the community. Think of the baby on board. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we have that level of exposure? And magnetic refrigerator photo frames. It sounds simple, but the refrigerator is the most highly visible surface in the home, and a magnetic refrigerator photo frame can serve as a billboard as well as a photo frame for the parents. And those are the elements that we have to show today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And I know you all probably have questions about some of that, and we're happy to take those here after just a couple of more slides so we can go to the next one real quick so we can look at tools and trusted resources. And really the important part about this section is, as we did our research and we talked to people specifically in the target audiences, we wanted to hear about the types of tools and the types of resources and sources that they trust. Because the one thing we want to make sure when we put this out into the community is that we're using tools that they trust and we're putting it in the places that they trust, such as doctors' offices, churches, child care providers, and things of that nature. So rest assured, when we did our research and talked to these audiences, one of the things always front of mind was, it's always great to put these creative concepts together, but where are the things in the areas that you trust? Where are you going to see this that you're going to be most attracted to it and most likely to utilize it? And you can see some of those examples on your screen as well. Next slide, please. And when we talk about potential audience engagement and tactics, and you can read through some of these as well, the most important part of this slide, and Tim alluded to it as well, we're going to use a number of different communications and advertising and outreach strategies, and many of those are designed to reach audiences where they are. And part of what I mean by that is we want to eliminate as many barriers to communication as possible, especially for some of those hard-to-reach audiences. We all know the challenge of reaching some audiences that have barriers to communications or language barriers or barriers to digital access. And we'll make sure that the efforts that we put forth address a lot of those things, and we try to reach as many audiences as possible. Next slide, please. And finally, how will we measure success? We have both a short-term and a long-term plan for this. Some of the short-term measurements and the key performance indicators that we'll be using are things that are pretty basic early on for a campaign, such as how many downloads of a toolkit or a resource, how many clicks to a video, how many views on a video, how many impressions on a website and visits to a website. But the long-term measurement is really where a lot of our focus is. And those are some of the things that folks in this room talk about a lot. And one of the key areas of that is that kindergarten readiness. And we want to, over time, increase those kindergarten readiness scores and make sure that we are providing resources to parents, caregivers, grandparents, and all those who impact that child's life early on to get them started at birth when that learning starts, and make sure that a couple of years from now, we're starting to see those kindergarten readiness scores go up even more here in Pinellas County than they are right now. And so with that, those are our campaign concepts. Those are our ideas for short-term and long-term measurements. And we're open to any and all questions that you have for us. And thank you for your time.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I have a comment. I want to say dynamic presentation. Just the visual right there would make me want to hit on the link just to see what what type of information I could get.
Judge, that's exactly what we want to hear.
Thank you. Smala?
I'd like to have some of the swag bags for my office and for Judge Moore's courtroom. So if you could just deliver those to the criminal complex, we have a few of the point of contacts, and we'll be happy to distribute some of those. It'd be very helpful, I think.
Great job.
Yes.
I don't see JWB's branding on any of the materials anywhere. And I'm wondering if that's intentional or if that's something you would add later on. You talk about trusted places, and I think it's a brand that people trust, and so I'm wondering on that.
No, that's a great observation. We will have we will at least have our logo on the items. We did a separate microsite so that it was easier to remember than embedding it within the JWB site itself. So turbobabies.com will be the main URL for the microsite. And then, of course, it will link. We'll have pages on our website linking back and forth. But yes, we will have our logo and on there. We didn't want to limit it to our branded colors. We know this is a community campaign, and then what tested the best was this very colorful, very brightly colored campaign. But we will either, reverse out our logo or keep it in our orange. But that was a great observation. You're our brand police already. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I just want to comment, very impressive PowerPoint slide, impressive what you're going to do. I'm really impressed with the marketing aspect of it, as well as the fact that you're including short-term and long-term performance measures, which are very important to this board. They're very important to me as well. So thank you very much for your presentation, and it was very impressive.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I couldn't agree more with the rest of the board. The presentation was amazing. I think you guys have done a yeoman's job on creating this message. As soon as I heard Turbo Babies the first time, all I could think of was the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. So superimpose the Albert Whitty track, and you're right there. There's also potential of another one coming that's more, actually, it's electrical cars that'll be potentially racing. So now we can talk about the impulses of brain waves, and it's all there. So fantastic. Well done. Let's keep this momentum going. You know as well as we do how important this program is to the community, to the children and the future children of this community. So again, thank you so much for what you've done. And please keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this
Thank
morning.
you.
Thank you all.
Let's move on to the Family Services Initiative, FSI update. Janine?
Yeah. Am I on?
And Susan.
Are you on? All right. Just pull my stuff together here. So, good morning. I'm excited to be here to share some information about FSI with you. I'll be co-presenting with Dr. Susie Patterson this morning, and we're going to share some information about the FSI history, as well as provide a program overview and also some program data. Before I get started, I just want to mention that we do have representatives from our core partner agencies, which is Personal Enrichment through Mental Health Services and Gulf Coast Jewish Family and Community Services here as well. So if you have any questions at the end that are specific to the programs, we can certainly defer to those folks. So as I said, I want to start with our history. FSI was formed in 2011 in response to community needs. So I need to, there we go. Sorry about that. Was formed in response to community needs. At that time, a lot of families were experiencing financial instability and struggling to meet their basic needs. Also, at that time, there was a countywide reduction in the property values and the tax revenues, which resulted in many of the safety net programs being either reduced or eliminated. JWB was looking for an innovative solution to address the growing number of families that were struggling to meet their basic needs. FSI was formed as a partnership to assist families in identifying and accessing the right service at the right time with an efficient service delivery model. Go on to the next slide. So on this slide, Dr. Barbara Morrison-Rodriguez had completed a qualitative analysis, and so these are some of the success factors that were identified within FSI. I do want to say that I believe that really in terms of FSI, the success is really due to our responsive partnership, our rapid intervention, our utilization management review, as well as our open and transparent communication. We do have a weekly meeting with our core partners where we talk about FSI system issues and work towards solutions. In addition, we do have a procedural manual that is on the JWB website that identifies our criteria for decision-making, as well as guidance on service provision and financial assistance. In addition, we have trust in our frontline direct service staff, our screeners and our system navigators, to be able to identify and address the needs with the families. We also focus our resources on family preservation and trying to reduce the need for deeper end services. FSI assistance is time limited, and we do require the families to utilize this support as part of their own efforts towards self-sufficiency. Our system navigators work with the families to develop a budget as well as a self-sufficiency plan. Let me move on to the next slide. So here we have our guiding principles. FSI is a partnership that's focused on quality service delivery, easy access for families, innovative technology, utilization management, and fiscal accountability processes. What we typically see is a family is managing, frequently living paycheck to paycheck. Something happens and it pushes them out of their ability to meet their basic needs. And that's really where FSI comes in. On this slide, we've identified some of our partners. I mentioned before about personal enrichment through mental health services and Gulf Coast Jewish Family and Community Services as our core partners. In addition, the Juvenile Welfare Board is the organizational backbone for the initiative, and we provide funding and oversight and cooperative leadership. We also fund positions, system navigation positions at PEMS and Gulf Coast. And as of April 1st, PEMS is also our front door for FSI and completes the screening. We call that FSI Connect. And I just want to say that they did a great job of putting that program together and implementing it in a very short time frame. So we just want to give kudos to our PIMS team for that. Also, on the right-hand side, you can see that we've identified what we call our side door partners. Our side door partners are agencies and organizations that are providing family support services or case management services to families, and they have access to our FSI resource pool to assist their families. Also, they are able to buy goods and services on behalf of those families to help stabilize them. Our navigators also have access to that FSI resource pool. The other thing I want to mention about partners, and we don't have this on our slide, but we do have a number of other partnerships to try and help and support families. One of them is our partnership with the City of St. Pete and Pinellas County Housing and Community Development to assist with the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We've partnered with them to assist their pending applications with being able to move those applications towards completion and payment processing. I will say that that has been a success since we started that partnership last year. PEMS has been able to assist over 700 families in completing their application and obtaining assistance for rental and utility assistance through those federal resources that came to our community. So that has been a great partnership for us. I'll also mention that we have partnerships with the eviction prevention legal entities in the community, and that's Bay Area Legal, Gulf Coast Legal, and Community Law. In addition, we have partnerships with our child welfare agencies. We are reestablishing and engaging our new child welfare lead agency, Family Support Services. We also have partnerships with our Child Protective Investigations Unit and with our Lutheran Diversion Services. For those child welfare partnerships, those are really on the front end of the child welfare system, and we're partnering to assist eligible families with basic needs to prevent further involvement in the child welfare system. So let me move on to the next one. So here I just wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about system navigation. Navigation is a core service with the Family Services Initiative. Our system navigators partner with the families. They assess needs and then work with them to address those needs. In addition, it's not just a financial assistance program. They work directly alongside the family to provide that direct assistance, as well as connecting them to other community resources to help stabilize the families. I do want to mention that our service duration is brief. It's generally 60 days or less. We have seen a little uptick in the length of stay in the program over the past few years, just taking a little bit longer to help stabilize families and address their immediate needs. The other thing I want to mention about navigation is that we have several types of navigation. We have a traditional system navigation. In addition, we also have a family connection navigation, which is a partnership with Pinellas County Schools. We also partner with the Habitual Offender Enforcement Monitoring Program. That's the HOME program with the Sheriff's Office to assist youth and families in that program. And lastly, we have a partnership with the State's Attorney's Office for truancy navigation. So that covers our navigation types. I'm going to move on to this next slide and really just wanted to give you a sense of a family that we have partnered with through FSI to assist and support. It was a single mother of 6 that was out of work due to COVID. She did receive assistance through the Our Florida program in 2021. Our Florida was a statewide program that assisted with rent and utility assistance. The family began working with the community law program for eviction prevention. The referral was made from community law to FSI. FSI staff were able to assist the family with back rent payments to help prevent that eviction. In addition, FSI reached out to United Way to braid funding to address other needs that the family had that were not able to be assisted through FSI. FSI and United Way staff provided regular updates to the landlord to let them know that they were working on the back rent and what the status of that was. FSI also made referrals to the Early Learning Coalition for the family for childcare. At the time when that case was closed, the family had stable housing, the children were in childcare, and the mom was able to return to work full-time. So by stabilizing the family and preventing further involvement in child welfare or homelessness, FSI really helped to make that family stronger. FSI provides hope to families by offering solutions and guiding them through challenges. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Susie to share some FSI data with us. Let me just move out of your way. Here you go. Yep.
Good morning, everyone. I want to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we've been seeing over the past 3 years And we chose this time frame because we wanted to give you a sense of what things looked like pre-pandemic, what we were seeing in 2020 before we had an influx of federal resources, and then in our last fiscal year. So some of the trends that we've been seeing, I want to talk about average length of stay. So average length of stay is the average number of days families are served by our navigation programs. And we can see, just as Janine said, that we've had a slight uptick in that over the past 3 years, still staying under 30 days though. In terms of service transaction requests, and service transaction requests are the requests that we get for monetary support through the FSI programs that came in. These can include things like diapers, they can include things that are more expensive like rent or utility, but we've seen in FY19, we had 598 service transaction requests come in. We see a big jump in fiscal year 20, over 2,000 came in. Then we had a bunch of federal resources come through, state resources come through. Last year, we had about 893 service transaction requests. Some of those types of service transaction requests that we've seen, the top types that have been requested over the years, rent and utility including electric service payment or gas payment, have always been the top requests from our navigators. In FY19, we had transportation, and then in the last 2 years during the pandemic, we saw that food assistance was the number 3 request. So I want to talk a little bit about the dollars that are being spent in these categories. So I'm talking to you right now about median service transaction dollars spent per service category. So I want to talk about a little what the overall mean looked like. So I have that represented on the graph, and then also those top 2 requests that I talked about in the last slide. So we can see overall, the mean dollar amount has kind of stayed stable over those the past 3 years, and I included this year to date so far because I wanted to show you what's going on with some of our other categories. Like I said, we have a lot of lower ticket items that people are asking for, said diapers, safe sleep type materials, but then we also have some higher price items that people are requesting. So we can see that with electric service payment, for example, over the past 3.5 years, that's gone up slightly, but when we look at rent assistance requests, we can see that from FY19 to FY22 year to date, the average request has gone up $1,000. And that speaks to what's going on more largely in our county, what's going on more largely in our country as well, in terms of rent increases. So I also wanted to break it down geographically for you too, of what we saw in the last year, for example, and this trend has pretty much held. But the zip codes with the most requests have been really located in South St. Pete, as you can see, with 33705, 33711, 33712. Rounding out the top 5, we also have 2 zip codes that reflect the Clearwater, Largo, Dunedin area, 33755 and 33756. And you'll probably see in the middle of the county too that we have another dark blue spot around Layleman. That would have been 6. There were 25 requests that came in last year from that zip code. So when we're talking about our programs here, obviously we want to know if we're making a difference with our families. We can talk about that monetary support, dollars spent, but how is success measured in terms of what is happening with our families? So what we use is something called the Family Self-Sufficiency Matrix. And when we're talking about self-sufficiency for FSI, we're talking about how well a client can meet their needs without public assistance. So the self-sufficiency matrix that we use as part of our programs is adapted from this larger Arizona self-sufficiency matrix to capture domains that are most relevant to our clients in need. So we have 15 domains that we look at to see if people are seeing an increase from the pre-test before they come into services to post-test. These include things like access to services, food and housing, but also things like childcare and parenting skills and healthcare coverage and physical health for both the child and the family adult. And that status is measured on a 5-point scale. So if a family is at a 1, it means they're in crisis, they're in dire need of aid, all the way up to 5 where families are thriving, and not only are they stable, but they are not in need of support from our social services and also are able to meet their needs long term. So I want to show you last year's self-sufficiency matrix. Overall, we saw statistical significance from pre to post-test amongst all of our participants, and we didn't see any decrease in any of these domains in any of our families overall. So the top 2 domains where we saw the greatest change was in access to services, which is not too much of a surprise considering the wealth of services that FSI can connect them to and our service providers that we work with. We also saw an increase in housing. So while we're seeing that families are still, requesting larger and larger dollar amounts, we are seeing that there is a difference in where families are starting out in the beginning at being at risk to being more safe at the end and able to pay those housing bills. Some of the domains where they stayed high in the beginning to the end were child education, parenting skills, and healthcare coverage and physical health of the child. So what are some of the lessons learned over the years? FSI has been around for a while now, and we've had major success in our flexibility and responsiveness to community needs. Some of the things that we've done in the past year, for example, are amending our federal poverty income limits, where at first we had families, you couldn't be above the 200% federal poverty limit to receive services, and we increased that to 250% to make sure that we're capturing and helping more struggling families in this county. We also had, as Janine was talking about our partnerships, the creation of new partnerships with the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, COVID Cares, and eviction prevention. And when we had that influx of federal resources that we couldn't supplant during the pandemic, our partners really deftly pivoted to being able to support families in doing those rental applications, things like that, which was a huge help. We also had targeted assistance for families affected by school closures, so that could be a reason why families could receive aid from Family Service Initiative. We're also in the process of reestablishing our relationship with the child welfare system, with the Child Welfare Lead Agency of Family Support Services, who we have now, and we've been having pretty frequent meetings with them to see how our values align, how our work aligns, and how we can work together to streamline all of our systems. In addition to all of that, in the past year, we've been conducting a SWOT analysis. And if you're not familiar with a SWOT analysis, it's a strategic planning tool looking at the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats of any sort of system. So we came up with 3 major goals. One of those was obviously implementing a new front door, which PEMS has done a really amazing job at picking that up. And in the next slide, I'm just going to give a brief update on what's going on with FSI Connect. Our second goal is to re-examine our decision-making processes and criteria at both the macro and micro levels. And that includes looking at our internal communication of how can we more swiftly make decisions, how can we make sure that the decision-making is happening at the right level so that things aren't getting held up. We also are going to start working on clarifying our criteria and process for side door access. So Janine talked a little bit about side door providers earlier, and we want to make sure that we're capturing and able to reach out to a lot of different organizations who are able to help our families in this county, and open that up and looking and taking a look at what that looks like for other organizations who might want to join. So I want to give a brief update, like I said, about FSI Connect and what we're seeing and what's going on. So I just want to say I have the first 2 months here that we were able to track, but verbally I'm going to give you some of the June numbers, which we just got in yesterday, so I wasn't able to put it in the presentation, but I think it's important for you all to hear about. So FSI Connect is continuing to see increased numbers of callers and online applications. I'm going to say PEMS has been able to reach all of them unless people have just not been responsive. So they've been really amazing in this process. You're seeing, that we have a total ineligible non-responsive list there. And that's a high number, but I want to say that's because there's a lot of people who they'll initially put in an application, our navigators will reach back out to them 2 or 3 times, and people are just not getting back. And our navigators are always reaching out multiple times to families. Also, some of the reasons we're seeing are that families are not sustainable by our criteria. They won't have enough money to pay bills at the end of the month, for example. And we're seeing that there's a lot of housing-related issues, which I'm sure you all know about just by being in this county, that there's a lack of affordable housing around. And if people don't already have access to housing or are moving in, that is a criteria for we can't help them as part of the FSI system, and they're referred back to our homelessness system in the county. So we don't help with those who are seeking housing or shelter. So that's one of the top 3 reasons as well. But you can see that our unique callers have gone up from April to May, 216 to 382. The referrals that we've made internally have gone up as well. And I just want to say for June, that unique callers has basically doubled. So it went up from 382 unique callers in May to 712 unique callers in June. And in terms of online applications, we had 170 in May. We had 390 online applications in June. And the total FSI referrals just to our internal system went up to 219. And beyond those referrals, we're making referrals to other systems in the county. So I just want to, like I said, I just want to recognize PEMS for doing such an amazing job at picking this up and being the front door and being very responsive to our families in this county. And I want to thank Gulf Coast as well for, being part of the system and also reaching out to families in a timely manner. So thank you both as well, and I wanted to acknowledge that. And thank you. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Any questions from the board? Yes, Smala?
I have a question about the non-responsiveness. Those numbers seem really high. What do you attribute that 353? So in April, it was 174, and in May, you've got 353 of ineligible. Is ineligible and non-responsive separated out, or is that a...
They're combined, so that's all ineligible or non-responsive. The biggest thing we're seeing is that people are non-responsive. It's reaching out to them multiple times, and then they're not calling back. Some people are putting in multiple applications, so that might be in there as well, so not responding to one. So it's still piecing out those numbers, so we can always come back with an update as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see that kind of sectioned out.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a difference between ineligible, what the criteria for that is, and people not responding. And then I think there should be some assessment of what is causing the non-responsiveness. If there's a way to sort of assess. Obviously, if they're not responding, you can't say, why are you not responding? Right?
I don't know if they'd respond to a survey question about why they're not responding.
Right. Yeah, I'm guessing they're not going to complete that doodle poll, but at some point, I don't know how you assess that, and I don't know if somebody has any idea about how you assess that type of thing and what the
No,
problem
absolutely.
is.
That's a really good question to find out, why that number. I mean, because the total number of applications has gone up, we're seeing that. But yeah, to figure out what's going on, where people are requesting help and then not following back up.
Thank you. Great presentation.
And I know we have Courtney Covington with PEMS, and she is leading the FSI Connect and our PEMS team, so she may have some additional information related to that piece.
Yeah, thank you. So July 1, we were able to tighten it up, and we have an in-system way of tracking. So since we started in such a flurry, the first 2 months were a lot of spreadsheets and tallying, so it has gotten tighter, but you're exactly right. So for this presentation, that non-responsive would include multiple callbacks to check on status, truly non-responsive or ineligible. And one thing I'd like to say is sometimes the terms like ineligible, anybody who calls in and we have live contact with receives community connection to services. So it's not an FSI system navigation or nothing. So we'll get DV calls, and I wouldn't say a large amount, but definitely we get seniors, so they wouldn't have minors in the home. But when you have a number that's 888-HELP, that's going to start to capture, hey, I need help. So all the online applications, anybody we can contact, one of the strengths of FSI through the years has been it is a strong, strong system of care model, which means it isn't, JWB is tremendous and they are financially tremendous in what they can allow us to provide. But the other component of the system of care that's provided is we have locked in amazing partnerships with all the social service providers, and that grows. So we had somebody call from Largo High, and they needed glasses, and I know you're a Packer, and they needed them immediately, and they were starting to go into testing, and they called us. We were able to call Preserve Vision, and that next afternoon they were there, and they got the glasses. So it's a lot of that as well. So I think we're still maybe learning how to capture all of that. But yeah, thanks. And hopefully, we're hoping that July data, and we've talked to Susie, Dr. Patterson, that that it'll be a little tighter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Great job.
I'm an oldie with this. I've been with FSI for 14 years when it started as FCSOC. So I'll take this opportunity to truly thank the board and JWB. It's a wonderful working model of what true social work, and I know Pat knows, within Pinellas County can be. It's truly a strength-based system of care that relies on all the wonderful partners out there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Again, thank you again for a well-done presentation and for the additional information. We really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving on to information items. Are there any that the board would like to discuss? Seeing none, do we have any comments from the public?
I don't have any comment cards. I'm still waiting to make sure she doesn't get under.
Okay. So, I'm just making sure they're having a conversation back there. Okay. So with that, if we have no comments, we have no anniversaries as we know of. So we do? We just don't have them written. We don't have them written. Okay.
Tell you what, I'll read them off the screen.
Here we go.
All right.
Mr. Butler. Here we go.
Sorry.
I'm going to probably have to yield to someone who can see that. Could you?
I'm happy to do that. Our June anniversaries include Nick Benedetto for 6 years, Megan Seals for 11 years, Sabi Guicelli, 16 years, and Linda Latour, 19 years. So congratulations to all 4 of them.
Thank you. Future meetings are on the schedule. Seeing no additional comments or questions, I'll adjourn this meeting. All right.
Welcome to.